So I've been spending a good amount of time thinking about the tendency I have to want to change myself based off of other people's idealistic traits, or the way I idealize the traits that I see in high performing people. So I look at someone's efficacy and see a snapshot that represents like this flawless attribute, and then wish that I could be that, because I wish because I don't feel like I'm enough as I am. Right? It's like if I could be smarter, then I would be more I would feel better. If I could be smarter, I would feel better. If I could be more productive, I would feel better. If I can be more well spoken, I would feel better. And what I believe to be the case, even though this isn't necessarily my felt experience, is that this feeling better is this a desire to be loved, right? It's a desire to be accepted, a desire to be seen and appreciated. Like, why do I want to be smarter? It's so other people will look at me and say, and be impressed. So this isn't how I want to improve. This isn't how I want to develop. This isn't how I don't want to constantly live a life of me only being able to improve because I'm not enough. I am curious if, like, I'm trying to figure out what are other ways to improve that do not require inadequacy. This felt experience of not being enough. Because, you know, I've done a lot of that. I've done a lot of assuming other people are better than me, of seeing how other people have certain, like nitpicking the greatest parts of other people, comparing myself to them, feeling like I'm not enough. On the flip side of it, looking at other people and judging them and seeing where they're at and saying, "Oh, you're not valuable because of this." Like, hey, this is my insecurity, so I look at other people and I see either they have an inadequacy around that place, so like they may be prone to distracting themselves, so that's an insecurity for me. I'm prone to distracting myself, and so when I see that in others, I judge them. And the only reason I judge them is because I judge myself so harshly. um, and then I'll see attributes that people have of, they work really hard, or they've achieved something impressive, um, and only see the big piece, or the obvious achievement, and not looking at the entire circumstance, and then say, "Oh, I'm inadequate because I haven't achieved like they have," um, even though there's endless circumstances to differ to separate me and that person. There's an endless domino of effects, or of instances that have allowed that person to be exactly where they are, and that's just not the life that I've had. Like, I'm not trying to make excuses for myself and say like, "Oh, I don't have to try because I I just didn't have a good upbringing," right? I was dealt shitty cards, and so like the idea of like, "Oh, well, you don't control the cards you're dealt; you control what happens to them." Um, and so I'm just finding over and over again that this tendency to compare with others is such an ineffective strategy, because it typically doesn't see the entire picture. So I see that this person's being successful. I see that they have success. and I don't see that they're potentially really not content with the decisions they made, or the success that they chased was like financial success or something louder. And then um, it's like, oh, in reality, they're just trying to feel accepted, but they think that if they can make money, then they can feel safe and they can feel um, like things will be okay. It's like, so can you just think that things are going to be so let's say that everyone, like, is this the mountain one, mountain two? Mountain one is that you chase money and you realize at the top of mountain one that it's not actually the goal, and that mountain two is there's a deeper thing that we are as humans, um and there's a inherent guidance within each of us, an intuition that can drive us to act in certain ways that are authentic to this, it's inherent, this thing inside of us. So our tendency, our desires. So like if you say, oh, and so it becomes messy to try and consider all of the angles that impact the way we function as humans. It's just so much. It's like my inadequacy, looking at other people and not seeing the entire picture, whether it be looking at their positives or looking at their negatives. The way I perceive other people is based off of how, like, the things that I care about, and so the circumstances that allowed that person to be where they are, whether it be in a good place, a bad place. Good or bad don't fucking exist, so it doesn't matter. But a good place or a bad place, for brevity's sake, is purely dependent on their circumstances. And someone would look at me and think, "Wow, he's so privileged in so many ways," and I am. But at the same time, it's like, well, the only way to really appreciate that privilege is to accept that I'm unique and I don't need to compare myself to other people. Like, as soon as I compare myself to others, then everything that I was given doesn't fucking matter, because like, no matter what, I will always find a way to not be enough. As soon as you compare, instead of coming at life with this feeling of like, oh, I'm wanting the opportunity to do as much with life as possible. What an amazing experience, and what an amazing opportunity it is to be living now. That is one perspective, and I think that perspective is I don't know if that perspective is possible to have unless if you also are holding inside of you, I'm not, or like that person, or comparison. And so, like, can I look at someone, or can I see an attribute and say that is a valuable attribute, that is something that I think that I would want to take in and encourage in myself? Yes. Can I improve without having to be inadequate? I think so. And so this is where purpose gets tied in. Like, if you have a purpose, then improvement is inevitable, because you'll be trying to do something challenging. And it's like, yeah, if you try to, if your purpose is to do something, like, typically the reason it's a purpose is that it's something to be worked towards. If you already had your purpose, then it's antithetical. It's impossible. Like, a purpose is a thing that drives you forward. Which means if you're moving forward, then you're automatically needing to change. And ideally, you're going to be developing in a healthy way, becoming better, but having this purpose drive you, as opposed to having insecurity and inadequacy drive you, is going to get you to improve, not on the first mountain of financial success out of insecurity, but out of, and like, having your purpose guide you is what allows you to jump the gun, or like skip ahead and just live a life of fulfillment despite the fucking things happening around you. So I see How to Take Over the World as a podcast, and they're going through the founding fathers, the relevant ones. So the first one is George Washington, and now it's Alexander Hamilton. And according to the podcast host, Alexander Hamilton is, and you know, he's not the only one to say this, is the most esteemed of all the founding fathers. And he also lived 300 years ago. So the things that stand out about him are going to be the loudest, most exciting, most sexy things. And you know, I'm sure that the host will eventually discuss there's quite a bit of a glare. You know, the shortcomings of Alexander, but at the end of the day, we're just being presented with the best of the best of all people. And so it makes comparison, like, if you're gonna compare, you're really shooting yourself in the foot, because you're not comparing yourself with people, you're comparing yourself with ideals. And that's impossible, because we're human and we're flawed, and we have so many unique circumstances that influence the way we are able to act in the world. So finding that purpose is what allows you to improve as a person through positivity instead of negativity and inadequacy. So I hope this helps, and thank you for listening, and I'm glad to have been able to talk about this.